Hello and welcome to my Artemis Cosmos video. I'm just going to talk through some of the features of the TSN Sandbox script that I've been writing and show you how bits work in terms of what's going on the server, what's going on the client, and then show some of the different console screens that are accessible through the ships. So currently you can see just the Artemis Cosmos game is running. I'm going to click on the Start Server button in the bottom left. And then from there what I can do is I can select the TSN Cosmos script, and that will actually load the script. On the server there's just two modes. There's a Game Master mode and there's a Firefly mode. The Firefly mode just configures ships ready for players to jump straight into. The Game Master mode is going to have extra features where the Game Master can set up particular ships for players to access and set up particular systems for players to access as well. In the Firefly mode it just adds in all the different systems. So on the server I'm going to select the Firefly mode because the Game Master mode is still being developed, so I'm going to select that, and then you'll see this launch button. This doesn't do anything until there is a ship that a client has selected and that it's ready to go. So if I click this now, you can see it's not actually doing anything at the moment. Nothing's running. So now we're going to look at what happens on the client side. I'm going to start up the client and I'm going to connect to the Cosmos server, and that brings me into the server. So this is what the client looks like when they first connect to a server, and the server's by default configured in the Game Master mode. They have this tab at the top that just says Officer. That's one of the main menu tabs. There may be more later on that adds different configurations, different screens to configure things for the officer, but at the moment it just says Officer. We've got a datapad ID. This is the last 5 digits of the client ID that the server gives this client, and then they've got this blank call sign. The call sign is just the player's call sign, so they can type in a call sign here and they can confirm it to update their call sign. Eventually that's going to be shown to captains on the captain's screen. It's going to be shown to the fleet captain screen as well, and it'll be shown to the game master screen. And things like being able to reset a client or be able to kick a client from the server if they've locked up or something like that, those are going to be features that link to this call sign and this datapad ID. At the bottom are sub-menus, so I have main menus at the top and I have sub-menus at the bottom. This first tab is the assignment tab, and the second tab is called the command tab, and this is where you can log in as a game master, or you could log in as like the fleet captain or a captain, and it'll just give you different options to be able to configure things. There's also a streamer mode that I've added recently where you can log into the streamer mode and configure it in a particular way, so then you can have your streamer set up as well on a different client. I'm going to stick with the assignment for now so I can talk through the different features. As you can see, there's no ships that I can select. The screen is just currently blank, but when the server switches to a Firefly mode, suddenly we get the ships that are configured that I can now select. So there's these 4 ships at present. These can be changed easy enough in the script. There's the TSN Paladin, Warrior, Defiant and Polaris. If I select the Paladin, you can see like an image of the ship and then the consoles that I can select, and there's this little default layout button. The Warrior has the same console, different ship. The Defiant is the same as the Paladin, and then the Polaris is another one. This was like a smaller destroyer ship, and you can see that the console names have changed. So different ships can have different numbers of consoles, and those consoles can be configured differently. I'm going to go back to the Paladin. The button here, the default layout, if you disable that, it switches off the default layout of all the widgets that are on the screen. So the widgets are the things that the player can interact with when they're steering the ship, when they're selecting things on weapons or comms, when they're looking at the comms waterfall, when they've got the engineering screen layout and things. I recommend putting it on the default layout until you become comfortable with how things are set out. There are some buttons that will not change position, because you can't change position because they're scripted in position, whereas the widgets you can change position, and I can show in a later video how to change the widget layout. Once you've decided which ship you're on, you can then select one or many different consoles, they appear in the order that you select them. So if you select a weapons console before the helm, they will appear as tabs in that order. So weapons will come first and then helm will come second. So that's just something that's slightly different to Artemis 2 if you're Artemis 2. And then you can select ready, and when the game launches, it will pull you into the game. So if I go back to the server and click the launch button that I showed earlier, it will now pull me into the game, and you can see I've got my weapons console and my helms console. Right, I've just gone back and selected all the different consoles. So the main console options are at the top. So you've got helm, weapons, engineering, science, and comms. Those are the 5 that are currently available. There are different types of consoles that I can add. So I had some called pilot console for a 2-seat ship, and there'll be things like a fighter might have a turret console that you can select. To cycle between those consoles, you can see Helm has got the white check next to it here saying it's selected. I can click on weapons, that'll take me to the weapons console. Engineering will take me to the engineering console. Science, there's your science console, and communications. So those cycle between the different kind of consoles and the different roles. At the bottom, all the consoles have these sub tabs. So these are like sub consoles within the helm console. So if I only had the helm console selected, I just have maneuver and pilot, and they just give different layouts and different options when you're playing in that particular role. So if you were playing helm, you could have that maneuver and pilot. The maneuver is very much the classic Artemis 2 kind of layout. I've moved a few of the widgets around, and I've added this 3D view because it's always nice to be able to see what's going on as well. And then this is your maneuver widget down here, so I can turn the ship left and right. You can use joystick as well. I can increase the speed of the ship, I can decrease the speed of the ship, and go into warp by selecting warp there, and it changes that. And then obviously I can go in reverse as well, so there's a little bit of the inertia there that you have to slow down before you start going forward again, which is nice. At the moment, this is set to a training mode on Helm, so you can't actually go up and down. But what you can do is you can go into the options menu, and then here where it says Helm Trainee, you can change to Capital 3D, which is very much like Artemis 2, where you can go up and down. So you can pitch the ship up and go above the plane, you can pitch the ship down and go below the plane. I'll show this again on the other console because it makes it a lot clearer. And then you can also go to the full 3D that actually enables you to roll the ship. So I'm going to switch to using a joystick. The full 3D enables you to roll the ship across. You can see on this ball here now the artificial horizon, the way that the ship is pointing. So that's pitching down and then pitching back up and rolling flat. So it's a little bit tricky to get your head around at first, but after a while it starts to make sense. So I'm going to swap it back to a trainee mode, and then it'll level me off automatically. I've noticed as well that the screen just shifts slightly when you're in a full 3D, with the ship a bit further down and the camera a bit further forward and above. I'm not sure why. That's something that's coded into Cosmos itself. Now, you can see I'm in the maneuver sub-tab, which sets it up like this. I can change the camera here. I can put info, LRS, and tactical. Those don't really do much on this screen, but they do change what's on the server. I can also change the camera. So there's a first-person camera. There's also a targeting camera or tracking camera, where it will track what you're actually targeting. So the object that you're targeting, it will focus on that. And then there's the chase camera, which is the classic behind the ship position. I think that's everything on here other than the stats in the top right hand corner, which I'll go into a bit more in the other menus. The final bit is this pilot sub console. So if you select this, it's kind of a new addition. The idea was if you're flying with a joystick and you wanted to be behind the ship and have that as your priority, it just swaps it round. So now you've got this full 3D view in front of you, and you've got the ship in the top left corner, just to give you a bit of tactical awareness of what's going on. You can still control with your joystick, with your mouse, and you can still control with your joystick. And then there's the different camera buttons up here. So if I switch back to the full 3D view, and I'm just going to turn the ship so it looks, you can see how the camera shifted the ship down. I find that ship there. Okay, so this is full 3D, so I can roll the ship, which is pretty cool. I can pitch down. Let's speed it up a little bit. You can see this, and then I can maneuver the ship around in different ways. So it just gives you that little bit more of a view while you're piloting, particularly if you're attacking enemies and things. If I keep rolling all the way over, I should at some point see that station again. I might actually be upside down. This is something that happens as well. You can very easily kind of get yourself lost in space if you don't have any reference points. There's the station. There it is. Okay. So it's definitely something to get used to. It's going to be interesting as well with how combat works with the beams and things. So the enemies currently still work on just a 2D plane. So yeah, that's some of the basic Helm console. What I'm going to do is I'll swap back to the trainee mode, and it should straighten me up. Perfect. Automatically straightens me up. Yeah. On here as well, you can see the stations are sharing their sensor data. So this station is sharing what's around it. This station's sharing what's around it as well. And the map currently, I've got it set to the relative helm display. I found that a little bit better than the old kind of non-relative display, just because in this one because you've got such big open spaces, relative just seems a little bit better for kind of going to where you want to go. Well, that's what, at least that's my preference. Alright, I've switched now to the weapons console. So to go from the helm, I've just clicked on the weapons tab up here, and you can see I've still got this same kind of weapons view. I can zoom right out and right in. Something that I've added into the weapons console, which I'll talk a bit more about, is a safety, so you can't actually accidentally target allies. For example, if I click on the Solent there, it's not going to accidentally shoot that that station. You've got some of your classic things up here. You've got your stats, so you know what ship you're on, your energy level. You know if you're docked or undocked, so whether you're going to get your ordnance replenished. And then your homing, which is the most valuable ones to weapons probably. Your homing, nuke, EMP, and mine quantities that you have. You also have your system operability, so weapons is at 100% operable at the moment, so it's taking no damage, and your forward and rear shields. Below that, I've added the shield widget, so this is inbuilt into the game, so it allows you to raise and lower your shields. At the moment, there's no penalty for having shields raised to energy, but eventually there'll be a big penalty to having energy to your energy for having shields raised. The next widget is the energy to torpedo and torpedo to energy, so I can convert my torpedoes and put in more energy, and I can convert them back to get my torpedoes back as well and reduce that energy. Below this, there's this auto manual function that I've been working on recently. It's not yet finished. You can see it says configuration, and below I'm just going to add some basic data about like the weapon beam setup. It's particularly focusing on beams. And then if you toggle that, there's going to be these different things that you can do to alter your beams slightly. So for example, you could increase or decrease your fire rate. So this is a multiplier onto your fire rate. So it's like 4 times faster, or it's just the base fire rate, or it's 1/10 of the speed. that's going to have an impact on how much damage that beam causes. So if you've got a beam and you increase the fire rate, I'm going to have something like the damage is reduced because the energy is being converted to recharging that beam more quickly, or you're not able to charge the beam up to full strength before you fire it. So it's not going to be put it up to fire rate 4 and you're going to be able to have your beams fire 4 times faster at the same damage. The same with this aperture. The idea is that you can increase it and decrease it, and it will focus the beam on a tighter spot. And the idea is that the smaller the aperture, the more chance you have of damaging an enemy system. The larger the aperture, the more chance you have of disrupting its shields, for example, because it's over a wider area. So the idea is it's like the breadth of the beam. So a broader beam is going to damage over a wider area, whereas a narrower beam is going to be able to target specific systems, and then 5 is going to be the kind of standard setting for that. And then I've got this target priority. At the moment there's no manual targeting where you get the gun cam, so instead I've added this target priority. This might change in the future. I might get rid of it entirely and just keep these 2 for the moment. And you can see target priority is set to hull, but you can choose a particular system against an enemy ship that you want to target. So if you want to target their beams, and then if you have the aperture set down low and you're targeting their beams, you've got a chance of hitting those beams, and it's a much higher chance with the aperture set down low. It would cause less damage to shields, and if they've got lower shields, you're gonna have more chance of actually taking out the beams. So yeah, there'll be. I'm hoping they'll add some kind of interesting options for a more experienced weapons officer to be able to tweak values based on what's going on with the enemy ship. You know, if they've got the shields high and they want to strip the shields off, they're going to increase the aperture and they're just going to target the hull, and that'll strip shields off. But if the shields are low and they want to take out the beams, they're going to reduce the aperture and they're going to hit the beams, and that's going to more likely take out the beam systems. It would be nice if I could have some kind of diagram up where you could click on a particular point on the ship, but we just don't have that feature at the moment. Bottom left is the classic menu of different ordnance that you can cycle through. So this is an in-game widget. This is an actual Cosmos widget. It's not something I've built. And then you can load those homing torpedoes there, and you can fire them as normal. Sub-consoles on here is a targeted console, which is this one. And it's specifically so you can click on a particular target and fire at it, which I'll do in a moment when I've created one. And this controls here, so this is the safety, so you can take the safety off, and that will allow me on the targeting console to shoot at a friendly station, so like that. Or I can put the safety back on and I cannot fire at that anymore. There's also auto targeting, where if I switch that on, then the weapons will automatically target the nearest enemy, and I'll show that later. But if I switch it off, then it means I have to manually click where the target is. I'll come back in a moment once I've spawned an enemy and I'll show how targeting works, although I just showed it with the station, and you can see just what's going on there. Said we'd look at targeting next, so I have created this hegemony ship. This is a Krellian cruiser, and I'm still on my weapons page. So to target that Krellian cruiser, I can simply click on the target and you get the purple target marker, and when we fly towards that target, it will engage and start firing our beams. Every time it fires our beams, it also shows us that our beams are firing. Now this Krellian is programmed not to shoot back at the moment, so we're not going to see any incoming fire, but we will see some outgoing fire. So if I just go like that, here we go, there we go, there's the beam fired. And then to untarget, I can just click anywhere on the screen and it will untarget that enemy. I'm going to warp away from it a little bit. In the controls, I can switch on auto targeting. So as soon as I switch that on, this Krellian will be targeted again. So if I go to auto targeting, and you can see it will automatically target that. I'll swing back around so you can see that. We're currently out of range. You have to be in range for the auto targeting to work. So if I spin around here, there we go. And see, as we get into range, I'm not clicking anything on the weapons screen, and it will target when we get into range. There we go. Auto targeting at the moment only targets the closest enemy. So if the closest enemy is directly behind you, it's going to target that instead. If it's directly ahead of you, it will target that. Any enemies that are further away will be untargeted. Eventually I'm going to make it a little bit cleverer so that it will target things within your own beams, or maybe in the configuration so you can select which kind of target that it will prioritize. So whether it's the heaviest target, whether it's the lightest target, or it's the one with shields off and things like that. So we could add that little bit of extra AI in there as well. Next up is the engineering display. This is the first display that you'll see on the engineering console. I've called it Ship Systems. And it has the grid, which shows the outline of the ship and all the grid points. When you hover over one, it gives you a coordinate. That's part of the Cosmos scripting. And then when you hover over one of these nodes, which is an actual system, it tells you what that is as well. So this is the impulse drive. We have an impulse drive here. And a shield emitter as well. We have an ordnance loading there, which is for torpedoes, beam arrays, like a sensor array, and then your warp drives as well. Depending on what ship you're in will depend on where these are located and which ones are accessible. This widget here is one inbuilt to Cosmos. You can filter out different systems so you don't have to see them all at the same time. And then in the top right hand corner you've got your normal stats readout of forward shields, rear shields, weapons, sensors, things like that. This space up on the top left is used for communicating with DAMCON teams, which I'll show shortly. Clicking on main engineering, it takes you to a smaller grid view that I've set up, and it also takes you to these sliders. Now you can alter the size of these. I'm not quite happy with the layout of them at the moment, so they'll probably alter. Very quickly you hold the subtraction key on the number pad, and it gives you the way to alter all your different sliders and things. So for example, you can make them a bit narrower, a bit taller, and then you can move your systems around. So maybe that's a bit of a better arrangement. Just be conscious that if you have the default layout, when you cycle back to it, it will switch back to that default layout, because that default layout is setting up where this should be. Your sliders are just like they are in Artemis 2. They go up to 300% or down to 0%, and they power these different systems. I've not added any sliders to this at all. This is just as it is. On this grid you'll also see that you can still hover over and see what is on that hard point, what that system is, and you can also direct your DAMCON teams from this picture as well, this grid as well. You'll notice there are no DAMCON teams on here at Auto Direct, and that's because they are your crew and they've not been actively deployed to the grid. So if I click on crew, this is your crew page, where at the moment we just have 6 DAMCON teams, but I can add other crews like medical crews, and I can add security crews, or we could have like a diplomat on here and things like that can move around to these different areas. So this is like an abstract view of the different areas on your ship: the medical bay, the cargo bay, the shuttle bay. When you select one of your teams, you get some data about them. You can see this is called DAMCON Team 1. There are 5 members of this DAMCON team that are okay. One of these members is lightly wounded, one of them is seriously wounded, and one has been killed. I can send that team to the medical bay. These lightly wounded and seriously wounded DAMCON teams will be healed and go into the okay, and then the one that's killed will be taken away from the team altogether. I'm going to send that to the med bay, and then you can see it's grayed out because they're currently making their way there, so you can't actually select them while they're grayed out. they don't instantly teleport across to the med bay. And when they arrive, you'll see them turn blue again. I'll just give that a moment. By default, all these Damcon teams will have a number of crew assigned to them that are all okay. I just set it up so that I could see whether this was working. So you can see now 7 are okay, none are lightly wounded, none are seriously wounded, and none, the one that was killed has been taken off the team. So this Damcon team is actually a strength of 7 now instead of the original strength of 8. I can move them between different areas here just by clicking. You can see I can move them around. He's going to stay grey there until he comes back. And then eventually what you'll be able to do is in these different areas, you'll be able to deploy them to things like shuttles, or you'll be able to retrieve different cargo and store different things. That's going to be the way that I take this screen altogether. You can still see though that there's nobody on the grid, so to send them to the grid I can select the team and I can click activate team, and that, when I go to my ship systems, show that they've activated here. Depending on which room they are in will depend on where they will activate. So if I activate this team, for example, they've come out the crew quarters up here, whereas the cargo bay is at the back of the ship. If I move these guys to the shuttle and these guys to the med bay, they are going to appear in different places. So the shuttles I think I put on this side, and the med bay I put near the core of the ship. So I'll give those a few seconds, then you can see these different points. Here we go. The one in the shuttle has arrived, so I can activate them. The one in the medical bay has arrived, so I can activate them. And then you can see this is the one from the medical bay, and this is the one from the shuttle bay. Now I can interact with them on the grid. They currently don't have any automatic movement, so if something becomes damaged, they're not going to start moving to fix that damage. We have to order them directly. So I can select my Damcon team. You can see here I can have them report to different areas of the ship again. So these report to med bay, cargo bay, shuttle bay and quarters. We'll send them back. So if I have them to report to quarters, it removes them from the grid and they are back making their way to the quarters. I can also select the Damcon team and I can send it to a particular point. So for example, that one's now moving. I can select my next Damcon team and send it to a new point. And as long as there's no damage, they're going to be able to make their way through the ship. We'll come back in just a moment and see what it's like when there is damage on the ship, and we'll see them repairing that damage as well. Alright, here we are, we're back, and you can see I've got 3 active Damcon teams on the screen, and I've got a lot of damage to my ship. Damaged hallway, that's just general damage, is shown as a small red dot over that node, and then a damaged system is the same icon, but it's turned red. You can also see up here, forward shields and rear shields were damaged. These are the actual ship shields, but you can see weapons is down to 16%, engineering is down, engines is down to 62%, sensors 50%, and shields 50%. These relate to the damage caused to these systems. So, for example, on here, the ordnance loaders, if they're damaged, they're going to slow down the reload time of torpedoes. If beams damaged, they're going to slow down the fire rate and the damage caused by beams. If sensors are damaged, it slows down the sensor speed. Impulse, if that's damaged, it's going to slow down the impulse speed that you're moving at, and warp will slow down the warp speed as well. I have a couple of stacked systems on here, emitters and impulse drive. The emitter shouldn't be there, it should be on a different node, but the emitter is the shield emitters that's been damaged. So now what I can do is I can select my Damcon team and I can direct them to a point on the grid that I want them to move to, and as they move there, they're going to start repairing. Every time they reach the damaged node, they're going to repair it before they move on. So if this Damcon team gets going, it moves to this node, it begins repairing it. Once it's completed its repairs, that node will disappear because it's just a general node, and then it'll move on to the next system node, which is this beam array. And as it repairs that, the weapons percentage will go up once that's repaired. So you'll see that 16 rise up. There we go, it's gone up to 33. And then that Damcon team is going to keep repairing. This one is going to come down here and start repairing this area, and then the final Damcon team is going to repair this array here. So this is the Damcon teams working their way through their ship to make sure that all the different systems are repaired. They're not going to move off a particular system until it is fully repaired. So that's something to be mindful of as you're moving around. Now let's take a look at the science screen. Here we have the active sensors screen. And on this you can see a map of the area where we are, so you can see all the different stations. You can see our own ship here, which is in the center, and then we have a couple of contacts here that aren't sharing any sensor data with us, and you can see they're displayed as unknown. So here is the widget on the right that gives us the ability to filter out active and passive. Passive are things like the nebula. So all these nebula here are counted as passive objects. Active objects are any objects such as stations or enemy ships or player ships that will be displayed here. And then we can also filter out ones that are USFP, and we can also filter out ones, the CIC one, which is actually an invisible one. You can activate a ping, which will put on a marker onto anything that's unknown. So you can see here I've got an unknown ping up here. I've got a couple of USFP pings around here. And then I have these ships here that have a ping of their own as well. These are currently attacking this station, which I don't really want them to do. And then I can do a JP scan, which stands for jump point scan. So this will scan for local jump points, and if there's anything within a certain range, it will show an arrow to that. So any ungated jump points that we want to look for, it will find. Now if I select one of these ships to see what's attacking, it will put a marker over it that's green. This is also displayed on other consoles as well, so you can see it on Helm and Weapons console, and it shows that that ship's selected, and then I can click to scan, and the scanning will increase, and then it will give me the name, it will give me all the data about it, and then this part here, any additional data that I can gather on it. I can also do it with the next one and the final one as well. Eventually there'll be more tabs here as well to do different types of scans, so you'll be able to do like a scan on whether there's any biological entities on there or anything like that. We also have a couple of different sub-tabs here. So navigation. In the navigation, you can see we've still got the large screen, but then in this top right hand corner, we've got a drop-down menu. Every system that's accessible will have an item here that you can select. So this is Freya 2. I can select Freya 2, and then we've got these different points to navigate to. And by clicking on them, it will put a nav point on there. The Helm, if I zoom right in on Helm, gets that nav point there, and the weapons will have that nav point as well. It's shown just to the crew on this ship. Remove it, that disappears. So go back to Helm, it's disappeared again. Just makes navigation that a little bit easier. So the science officer can go, right, we want to go to Elisa station, it's in that direction. I put a nav point up for your Helm, and then Helm can turn and go towards that station. This, like I say, only applies to the ship that the science officer is on. It won't apply to another ship. For example, if we had the TSN Warrior on, they would have their own nav points. The final one is visual sensors. If you can't scan a target, I've added this visual sensor, so it's the 3D main view screen. There's a smaller map up the top, so you can still scan around here like this, and then you've still got the filters down here, so you can filter things out. And then any data, any scan data that you've got can go there. So you, instead of getting an active scan on something, you could get a visual scan on it as well. And that might be because you are unable to scan the object, or because you want to see what's going on with it. Maybe there's some kind of status effect that you need to look at to get a closer look. The final console that I want to look at is the communications console. This is the communications console itself. On the top right, you've got an active tab again, so you can look through your active contacts, your USFP contacts, or anything that's USFP contact. The CIC, just ignore that for now. That's for something. That's just the game master marker that pops up as a contact. This here is the comms waterfall, so you can see Papa 5-4. I go to my science map, that's this target here. Let's just scan that quickly. This is an allied target. There's Papa 5-4, it's a light cruiser. They are sending through what they are doing. So you can see they're moving to this position, they'll be moving to the next position. They'll also report in if they are attacking something. So for example, if a Krellian cruiser pops up, they are going to say that they are moving to attack that. So let's see if we can get Krellian cruiser in here. Here we go. So now you can see Papa 5-4 is targeting a new ship. The Krellian cruiser also sends out messages to say what it's doing, but you can't decode these messages, so it says signature scrambled. I'll go into that a little bit more later. When you select Papa 5-4 as well, you can, so if you select here, it shows this COM selection here. Let me just deselect on science very quickly. It shows a COM selection here, and then below it shows some of the options that you can do. If I select a station, like the Solent, I can hail that station. We'll do this one first. So when I hail that station, they send me a message. I can click on that message and it gives me some information about what they are able to do. So you can see this Solent station. There's a dock access code, which I have to set in comms for the Helm officer to be able to dock there. There's the facilities that it's got, so it will refuel my ship. It allows me to dock. It will restock my ordnance, and it will replace any dead or damaged crew. Then it tells me it's stock of homing torpedoes, nuclear torpedoes, mines, and P-shocks as well, and that's the current stock that it has. So I can click on that to open it, and I can click it again to close it. You can scroll through these messages as well using the scroll bar. You can look at just the particular thread of a message as well. I've not really experimented with these too much. The thing that we want to do is be able to dock to a station. So if I go to Solent and I enter this code 76972 in the right place, it will allow the Helm officer to dock. Right now, if I move and dock, if I move and try to dock here, nothing actually happens. Okay, so if I go to the pilot screen, you can see we're not actually docked. We need this authorization code, so the comms officer has to enter that. To go to the interface, this is the next one along. These here are going to be for unscrambling the communications codes used by enemies, but they're not yet finished, so I'm not going to go through those. But you can see there's a jump access code. This is to go into jump gates, and there's the dock access code. This is where we're going to enter that code. I'm just going to go back and double check what it was. It was 76972. So I click here, I enter 76972, click confirm. It updates my dock access code, and then the Helm officer can now dock the ship. Without that dock access code, you can't dock the ship. And it stays there permanently as well. If I hail a different station, so if I hail, say, the Amari station, and I click hail, they have a different dock access code. They also have different facilities, so these will only refuel and allow me to dock. They're not going to restock me with anything, despite the fact that they've got quantities of things there. They are not going to allow me to take those from them. In the interface, the jump access code works exactly the same. You just enter the code that you're given, you click confirm, and that sets the jump access code for the ship. The final sub tab is the fleet coordination tab. This allows comms to be able to see on the map where things are, but it also allows comms to direct ships. So you'll have noticed when I selected on this main comms tab, Papa 45, there's hail and there's send orders. In fleet coordination, I also have that hail and send orders. I can select Papa 45, sorry, Papa 5-4 by clicking on it. I could also select Solent Station by clicking on it. So you can select them by clicking on the map now. And then what I can do is I can send orders. So if I click send orders, currently there are only defensive orders that I can send. So I can defensive. I can click defend point. You'll see up here it says indicate the. So if I open that, indicate the coordinate to defend. Here I can now click on a particular coordinate to defend. So I want it to defend this rear area here. So I'm going to click there. And then what it's going to do, it's going to say orders received, and that ship is now going to move to this area and defend this area. So that's defend point. So that's going to defend a particular coordinate in space. What I'll do is I'll leave it running and I'll speed up this section of the video so you can see how it moves. Now that it's reached its location, it's going to patrol this area. So it's going to stay within this particular area and it's just going to have a random patrol pattern around it. The other option is to defend selected. So if I click on defend selected, I can then choose the actual thing that I want it to defend. So in this case, I want it to defend, let's see, if I zoom out on it, to defend the Umari station. So I can click on the Umari station. It'll say orders received. I'm going to add some more content here, I think. So something like orders received, moving to defend Umari station. And it might be orders received, moving to defend this particular point in space, so that it's just a little bit clearer what's going on. And then it's going to just continue on its movement paths. One of the final things that I want to show you in this video is the streamer mode. So you can see here the game isn't currently running. These are the different options for the ships. So I can select one of the ships and I can select which position I'm in, or we can go into streamer mode. For this you have to go into the command sub-tab down here, click on that, and then in the authorization code, enter the authorization code, which at present is just STM in capitals, and click confirm. And then you can see it just switches to this default streamer mode. I'm going to add some configuration things here for streamers. For example, how quickly it switches between different ships, whether it includes switching between different enemy ships and stations, things like that. I've not come up with a lot of ideas just yet, but at the moment it just cycles through the current player ships. So if I launch the server now, there'll be two ships spawned. This is the TSN Paladin, and I also have the TSN Warrior. And what this streamer mode is going to do is it's just going to cycle this main screen between the two ships every so often. So there's the Paladin, and it's going to swap to the Warrior after a few seconds. And this will be something that a streamer can change how many seconds between each one. The Warrior is a different ship, so you can see that it's swapped. And then it's going to swap back, and it will cycle between all the different player ships over a period of time. So if there are 6 ships spawned, it will just swap between each of the 6 ships. Like I say, I'm going to add some more configuration to this so that streamers can set up the cycle time, so they can set up which ship it focuses on. I'm also thinking of adding things like the ship badge as well. If it's got a ship badge, maybe some data about the ship. I'm not quite sure, but there'll be things that a streamer can toggle on and off. So there might be some data about the ship, there might be a view of the ship grid or something like that, so you can see that next to it, and you'll be able to say, yeah, I want the ship grid on them all, so I'll click that on. But this is the initial implementation of the streamer mode. I think the time is just set on about 10 seconds at the moment, just for testing. It'll be a minute, 2 minutes, it can be any time really, that a streamer would want to set it to. And there we have it. Those are all the different consoles and the different sub-consoles that I currently have in Artemis Cosmos. I hope it was interesting watching. I hope it explained a few things of how things worked. I'll add some more videos about how the Game Master console works once I've fleshed out a few more features, although it is complete enough to be able to do things with. And I'll add a little bit extra as well when I've released more things. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.